Next question is from D Kindle on YouTube. My question is around utilizing Voss Kveik yeast. Since this yeast ferments so fast and warm, does it make sense to hold off on aroma hops and make up for it in the dry hop? I have noticed the last few times I used this yeast, it seems to have driven off any aroma flavor hops I threw in the Whirlpool or toward the end of the boil. Great question. And I think it's a real possibility. And I feel like, so I've brewed 150 batches of beer with either Voss or the three versions that Omega had at first, because they had Hothead and they had Voss and then they had Hornindal. And I've used those yeasts a ton. Okay. And I got to the point to where I was brewing at this one place where the technology, where the brew house was so farmhouse. We'll just say farmhouse. When I was brewing at home, my processes were tighter because the equipment was better, and it was not expensive equipment that I used. But anyways, don't get me started. But it was a non-temperature controlled brewery that was fermenting in plastic. And so I started working with Kveik in order to kind of work around some of those things. You bring up a really good question. So, you can ferment with Kveik yeast very, very high. And I think in my mind, when a new product comes out, people always have these different ideas about it and how it's going to change the industry and everything like that. I think it's a plenty valuable tool. I think that you can ferment that yeast at 68 degrees and it's happy. And I have had that beer fermenting up to 108 degrees. Okay. And that beer was servable and worked. All right. It's pretty wild. I don't think you have to ferment that hot. I think you can ferment cooler. I think that there is utility from a time standpoint, because when you are allowing those chemical reactions, that consumption of sugar into alcohol, flavor, CO2, and other things, when you do that at higher temps, it happens faster. Those chemical reactions happen faster. That yeast likes to work faster at those higher temps. I think that Kveik yeast is great. I think you get like a slight orange peel ester off of it. Sometimes people were making it sound like you could almost make a fruit beer out of it. It was so estery, and maybe you can, but I've done a lot of different things with that yeast. I've underpitched, average pitched, overpitched, cold fermentations, hot ass fermentations. I've done a lot with the 150 turns that I've done with that yeast. And it was, you bring up a good point, because if you are fermenting that vigorously, I believe it was Jeremy Marshall from Lagunitas who said that the fermentation is the second boil, right? It's the second opportunity to be blowing aromatics out of your beer, especially hops. So yeah, that makes sense. If you have this monster ripping fermentation, you can be blowing off a lot of those aromatics. I would say you probably still have some flavor and potentially body differences with those beers from the fact that you are getting maybe some of that polyphenol contribution from that late hop that you did on the hot side. You can slide that hop addition all the way to the dry hop if you are doing that after that crazy hot, vigorous fermentation. But I would, you're right there. My concern when doing that is those beers can get a little bit flabby. Those beers that don't really have any kettle hop and are just really, even if you have a bittering hop, or they can be flabby, or they can be a little bit one-dimensional as far as the flavor and aroma goes. I feel like there is something to getting some hot side contact on hops for those hop forward beers. But give it a shot. Or you could just run Kveik at a more traditional temperature and not sweat it. I mean, that's the other thing, unless you're really stuck on a timeline and you got to flip it, just dial it down, man. See what you can do. Ferment that thing at a cooler temperature. But yeah, you are right that you can probably definitely be blasting off some of that stuff out of your fermenter. And those are some of the things that you might be able to do to work around it. Anyhow, that was from who was that from? D Kindle. Thanks for the question, brother. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you feel as if you got any value out of the video, please like and subscribe. There are also other videos that you can watch. They're gonna maybe be over here or over here. Appreciate you watching.